and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm Missy Day, and with me is our What's Your Story partner,
What's my name?
Michelle.
Woo! To get that reference, you'll have to watch the podcast with Missy Severance.
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 That's okay.
Oh, my Lord. What's your name? Guess.
Who are you?
Who should I ask?
We're having name issues today.
Well, my name is Brian Williams. The Brian Williams, in fact.
Are you on MSNBC?
Not today.
But you will be.
Exactly.
We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
The Brian Williams. I like that.
So, why are you here?
Well, I had a reason. I thought I was here before walking in. I'm here to share my story publicly on your podcast. Ms.
Yay! So Brian had reached out to me and said that he felt it was time to share his story. And so, that's what our podcast is, what's your story? So people tell their stories. And so you came and joined my speaker training class.
I did.
And then shared his story, and we all were sitting there going like, what? And so we decided that he needed to be at What's Your Story as well, just like Missy. And so you just recently spoke at Like Minded Lunch.
I did.
Which was awesome.
Told your story for the very first time in public.
I did.
Yeah.
So
Congratulations.
How did that
Thank you.
feel for you?
It felt great. It was a really good feeling. I oddly was not apprehensive at that point sharing my story at all anymore. Even though it had been really, and it is really personal, and it had been shared only in really my household and a few very, very close friends of ours up until that lunch earlier this week. I think the reason that it felt so natural and good to share it is I've come to the conclusion that sharing my story, if it just inspires one person to make a really positive change in their life, that would be amazing for me. And as I have gotten older, maybe a little wiser, Mom, if you're listening, maybe a little wiser, I really want to leave something behind that leaves a mark on the community and in the world. And I believe, and I know that other people sharing their stories have left a mark on me and the people around me. And so maybe my story will leave that mark on someone else, and then that'll help their community and the world in a way. So
The power
that's
of
my
story.
mindset on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and thanks for putting this all together, because you give us the platform to do this, and so you're leaving a big mark, and I love it.
Thank you very much. That's it. We talk about What's Your Story all the time and what we want to see happen. And the thing is that it takes on a life of its own, and it kind of like does its own thing every single year. And I'm always so feel blessed because of people like you and our other podcast guest, Missy, who it clicks and it's like, it's time for me to share my story. And I love that. That's my favorite part. And which is why we were creating different platforms for people, to do that. And so first, I just want to say that I was very proud of you for sharing your story. And I really don't want to give your story away here on the podcast, but your story, I think, has the potential to impact so many. Because as you know, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we feel the need to run around with a mask that I've got it all together and I'm perfect, and that's what you want everybody to believe, and we sell it really well until we can't anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that you say that specifically. We're taught in a lot of ways as entrepreneurs, especially like, captains of our ship and founders of organizations, to really put on that mask. And specifically, we're taught by our mentors and leaders in the business world, at least, oftentimes, you don't want to talk about what's going on while you're bleeding out, right? Is the phrase that I remember hearing for many, many years. And you want to really, keep that to yourself. And then when you fixed yourself, then, maybe start being more vulnerable and talking.
Right.
And I found that maybe that wasn't the best choice for a lot of us. And maybe we should have reached out sooner for help and support at least. And we don't oftentimes because we're feeling like we're the only one, or, I am not what I should be. I'm not in the place I should be. And if I share that or reach out to anybody, I'm just going to be ridiculed and put down, and it's going to hurt me. And the opposite is true.
Especially nowadays. I mean, I think it's kind of come full circle where we were shamed for sharing the things that weren't perfect in our lives, or if we were going through a hard time. And now it's definitely encouraged, I feel, especially for business owners or CEOs, like heads of company that have all this responsibility. They need to look credible. But I think it's a connecting point to consumers and even, the team members that, hey, this guy, this girl, whoever is not perfect. And they still were able to achieve, right, whatever it is they achieved. They either got through or they're going through. Like-minded lunch, you told a snippet of your story where you shared what you're going through with someone else in the business world, and it actually became a connecting point for the two of you.
That's right.
Right.
And not knowing that we shared a similar story at different times, separated probably by about 30 some odd years even. That being said, that connection has been super powerful from a relationship perspective. It's been super powerful from a profitability perspective. And so I'm convinced that most, if not the vast majority of us, have a story and are struggling in some way. And if we would just be comfortable or know that there are people out there, which is most of us, who would be willing to just sit down and listen and help in some way, the world would be a lot better. So, and there's so many things that come to my mind about and people that I know that I have now encountered after sharing my story, just in the short amount of time that I have, that are coming through the woodwork and going, wow, I really want to sit down and talk to you more about this because I have something similar I'd like to talk to you about. And that's a great feeling. That's a really good feeling.
Absolutely. We asked this of Missy as well, so we don't want to give away your story.
Okay.
However, is there a theme that you've developed that you can see running through your story?
Yes. So, and this goes back to a theme I believe is carried a lot by founders and entrepreneurs, especially. Not that it's limited to us. And that theme is we're drawn to chaos. And I think a lot of us that start businesses and get into that kind of a situation thrive in an environment where there is chaos. And I think a lot of times we create it, either intentionally or unintentionally. And I know for sure the story that I shared, I was literally creating lots of chaos in my life. Not necessarily intentionally, but maybe psychologically or subconsciously. And I was using it as a tool to maybe distance myself from some other chaos that was going on. But I think we just need to recognize that chaos is not necessarily a bad thing to be able to deal with, but it's not necessarily a good thing to create, either intentionally or not intentionally.
It's the type of chaos.
It's the
that
type
makes
of
the
chaos.
difference. Yeah.
And we're drawn to that, and we end up getting good at it, good at thriving in chaos. And so, you mentioned something, Missy, wow, I was surprised that Brian had this story, and when I shared just a snippet of it on my social media, not going into really any detail, several people, either publicly and mostly privately, messaged me and said, "What do you mean? You've got it all going on. This can't be you. No way." And that's the really interesting part is man, during this time when so much was chaotic and not good happening for me, yet on the outside world, not everybody, but many people were thinking, man, I've got it all going on, and all this other stuff. And so recognize that not just in yourself, recognize that in other people that you're interacting with. And even if, and maybe even because they look like they have it all going on, it doesn't mean they don't need your help. They don't need to, it doesn't mean they don't need the love that ultimately comes with sharing your story and connecting at this level. Because I certainly needed it for a long time. And for whatever reason, I didn't reach out to the people that ultimately ended up rallying around me and basically say, you got this.
Yeah. You left us with a little nugget at Like-Minded Lunch. Can you share that?
I have to think about
Do you want me to remind you what it's
yeah,
about?
please. Even
Because I
though
know that
felt,
was a big day.
it was, and even though I felt great about sharing it, it was also very emotional. So what
Right.
was the nugget I left?
It was about treating, if you just treat everybody.
Oh, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
I triggered your memory.
You totally did. Yes. So I follow several mentors, coaches. I read. Most of us probably do. Some of the greats, right, like Stephen Covey and Napoleon Hill, and then some other more obscure names that we may not be familiar with. And one of the mentors I follow is a person by the name of Dr. Kevin Elko, and I had the privilege of meeting him in person at a luncheon maybe 4 or 5 years ago, which was awesome. And one of the things that he teaches and he imbues on us is that treat everyone as if they're hurting, and you will not be far off. And I've become to live by that. And it really is everyone. And the more I've expressed my story, the more I'm no longer surprised, like, oh, wow, they have a similar story and they have a similar story. And these are like champions of industry and like some of the most outwardly successful individuals that I know in my life, financially, family-wise, everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea, which is the same response I'm getting from a lot of people.
I think you need to say that again just one more time for the people that didn't hear it.
Hear which part?
The part, how do you treat people?
Yeah, so the phrase, and I sign most of my emails with this, is treat everyone as if they're hurting, and you will not be far off.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, and that sank in with me because you never know what someone's going through. The barista at Starbucks, the bagger at the grocery store,
Right.
whoever,
Everyone.
Where I think it becomes a challenge for us to live that phrase is when someone is behaving in a way that maybe put us off.
right?
Like you mentioned, like a barista at a coffee shop, right? And maybe they're just struggling and suffering, and that's the energy you're receiving from them, and they just may need some love,
Right.
And you don't know what's going on behind that mask. You just don't know. And so I no longer make any assumptions that this is just a mean person or this is a rude person, or I don't make any of those assumptions anymore.
Well, and it doesn't, I mean, it takes nothing for us to give them grace because, everyone has given us grace in some way, shape, or form through our bad days.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank goodness for those people.
Thank God.
One of them is waiting for me in the lobby right now. Happens to be my wife. So.
Well, since you brought up your wife is waiting for you, so what happens like with the family? So how's the family feeling since you've decided to share your story?
So initially, and my wife in particular was like, what? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the point? What is this? What good can come of this? And I explained it to her just the way I explained it in the beginning of our conversation here, that if I can just influence positively one person to do something great for themselves, I know that's going to be great. I mean, I basically said, look what's happened for us and for our children and for some of our friends around us, and how much better and stronger and more love we have than we've ever had, just because of the change I made. I want that for someone else. And so she got that. And even more so after, because she attended the lunch that we talked about as well. And even more so after that, that resonated now with her. So she's now continuing, as she always has, be my rock and be that support system that really got me through my story. And then for my children, I actually before I spoke at the luncheon, I asked my children, what was it like before and what is it like now? And they shared that with me. And I brought some of that into my conversation at lunch. And they're really proud. Like one of the comments that one of my children said to me is, "I'm really proud." I'm like, "What are you proud of?" "Well, I'm proud of you, Dad." And that was a great feeling. Much different from the feeling that I had when I was going through my story. But also they feel a sense of pride, not just in me, but like they can count on me, and they feel a sense of pride in themselves because they were all part of the story and encouraging me, because they all live under my roof, to collectively rise up and conquer this as a family. And so they all feel that sense of accomplishment and pride. And they also shared that they now go out in their world to their friends who in some ways are living through a similar story that they were living through before, and they are providing a bit of a light to their other friends.
Yeah, they're sharing their own stories from within your story to affect other people.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's the spider web.
Exactly. And so that's what's going on in my house right now. So, and it's wonderful. And yeah, so like I think that answers what you were alluding to.
Yes.
So.
Well, we are thrilled that you're going to be part of What's Your Story in October.
I am too.
Yay, that's good. I'm glad you're excited too.
I am.
We don't like tie people up and force them to get on
Okay,
stage.
this person doesn't really want to be here. No.
But get out there.
He's going to do it anyways. I'm most excited for you to experience it. That's what I'm excited for, because you step forward first with the story, where a lot of times people go to What's Your Story and then want to share their story. And so you're kind of coming at it from a different perspective. So I'm really excited for you to experience it, because there's not a chance that we could ever explain
It's
what it is.
the magic. You have to go and experience What's Your Story.
Yeah.
I can't wait. And you're right, I have never attended the event itself. I just saw your posts about the concept of it, and I was drawn to it. And that's why I called.
Why were you
That's
drawn
awesome.
to it?
Well, I felt this desire to share and for the reasons that we've already discussed. Yet I didn't really feel like I had a platform that was set up to do so. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just start posting on Facebook or something like that. I'm like, well, I just didn't feel, I didn't feel connected to that really.
Right.
And so that's part of it. And the other part of it is, and more recently, I've begun to do a lot of public speaking in my business world, totally unrelated to any of this. And something I think you brought up, Missy, is that, well, maybe I'll start incorporating this part of my story into my more formal business talks. And I've been now noodling that in my brain going, maybe I will. And maybe that would help further inspire the people that I'm speaking to, whether they end up doing business with me or not. It's not the point. But I can serve this other purpose that I now have. And in addition to conducting business, knowing full well, back to the phrase, treat everyone as if they're hurting you, won't be far off. The people that I'm speaking to in the audience are the same.
Yeah.
Right? And so even if they don't necessarily transact with me, it's okay. And it always has been. But this is like cool, because they're still transacting in some way because they're getting inspired by this other part of my story.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with business per se.
Yeah, and I guarantee you there's somebody that is going through the exact same thing you are going through in that audience. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And just needs to know that, there's hope. It all comes back to hope. All of our stories, we go through what we go through for a reason. It's not just by chance. And it's for you to inspire and give hope to somebody that's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And let's be real, business and personal life, it's all intertwined. It is all intertwined. I mean, yeah, you keep it separate to a degree, but if something is, really tough in business, it's going to affect your personal and vice versa. So to give a piece of your personal story, I just think would help connect them more. And like you said, that is their transaction with you above all else.
Absolutely.
They get to feel like they're not alone.
Far more
Get
impactful.
hope. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we are so thankful that you came and joined us today on our podcast.
Yes.
And we are thrilled that you're going to be joining in us October, not February.
Someone said February.
Be there in October. Walking.
So thank you so much. You're going to love it. You're going to be amazing.
Oh, thank
I
you.
can't wait to see all the people that you touch. And so for What's Your Story, thank you for turning in today. Come and see Dallas Jenkins. If you're watching our podcast, I'm stealing that from you. And have a great day.
And for more information, go to whatyourstory.vegas.